The ruins still breathed heat when the Queen stepped across the shattered plaza. Ash swirled in slow spirals, caught in the faint gravity of Elira's third moon. Her people whispered behind her, wings folded close to hide tremors of grief. Crystal towers that once bent sunlight into rainbows lay split and blackened. Beneath her feet, fragments of songstone keened in faint resonance, echoing the moment her daughter had been taken. Zelera pressed one slender hand to the wound in the planet's skin. She felt the same emptiness inside herself, a silence where Lysra's bright mind voice had once brushed against hers each dawn. The Hive had come without warning, tearing through the defense grid with bioacid cannons. They had taken younglings, scholars, anyone with the gift of resonance. Lysra had fought. Of course she had. But she was barely past her first century, still learning to focus her crystal harmonics. The soldiers who survived spoke of a human mercenary trying to hold the line, buying seconds before the Hive drag claws closed. The council gathered in the hollowed shell of the palace. Their iridescent cloaks dulled by soot, they argued over surrender or retreat to the hidden clusters. Zelera listened in silence, her gaze fixed on the empty dais where her daughter should have sat as heir. She wanted to scream, but a queen's grief could not break before the court. When the voices faded, she declared that the Illyrians would endure. If the Hive believed their spirit broken, they were mistaken. Outside, orbiting transports discharged relief crews from allied worlds. Among them walked a man whose bearing carried the quiet weight of survival. He was human, heavy boots crunching on the crystalline gravel. Scars lined his jaw, silver against sun-dark skin. A pulsed rifle rested across his back, but his eyes, clear gray, searched the ruins with a soldier's care rather than curiosity. He knelt by a fallen spire, examining a scorch mark shaped like an open claw. When Zelera approached, he stood with deliberate respect. "Captain Jace Rowan, Earth Expeditionary Forces," he said. "I came as envoy, but I also bring witness. Your Highness, I was there when the Hive struck." The court watched, feathers bristling at the bluntness of his tone. Zelera held up a hand to still them. "You saw my daughter?" Jace's nod was slow, almost reluctant. "She was alive when they pulled us apart. She shouted for her people to run. The Hive don't often take captives, but they swept her with the others toward their drop organism. I tried to reach her." He stopped, jaw tightening. "I failed." The words landed heavy, but there was no deceit in his stance. Pain, yes, and the stubborn refusal to let it own him. That quiet defiance stirred something in Zelera's hollow chest. "Why come here?" she asked. "Why not return to your own command?" "Because there's a chance she's still breathing." He met her gaze without flinching. "I don't leave comrades behind, even when they're not mine." For a heartbeat, she felt Lysra's laughter echo in memory. The way she teased the visiting Earth pilots, fascinated by their unpolished courage. The Queen inclined her head. "Speak of this chance." Jace outlined what little intelligence he carried. The Hive had withdrawn toward the Veil Nebula, into regions charted only by smugglers. A cluster of spore ships formed what his scouts called a nursery fortress, hidden inside a drifting asteroid field. If Lysra lived, she would be there, studied or conditioned for whatever purpose the matriarch intended. Time mattered. The Hive reshaped prisoners into living tools if kept too long. The council bristled. "A suicide venture," muttered Elder Save. "Even if we knew a path, our fleets cannot pierce Hive territory." Jace rested his palms on the table. "You don't need fleets. You need a small unit that can move quiet and strike fast. I've done extractions before." "You offer yourself?" Zelera asked. "I owe it," he said simply, "and I don't see anyone else volunteering." Silence stretched, broken only by the faint chiming of cracked songstone overhead. Zelera searched his face for arrogance, but found only steadiness. She turned to her advisors. "Summon the Star Wardens. We will hear his plan." Within hours, a strategy council formed in a surviving chamber below the palace. Maps flickered across crystalline consoles, overlaid with human tactical grids. Jay stood at the center, explaining approach vectors through the nebula's maze. His voice held none of the polished cadence of diplomats, yet every sentence carried the weight of experience. He proposed a mixed squad, 2 Illyrian scouts for resonance tracking, 1 Earth combat engineer, and an adaptive AI drone called Vesper. They would ride a stealth corvette fitted with hybrid dampeners, slip past Hive sentries, and pinpoint the nursery fortress. Risk hung heavy in the air. The Illyrians prized harmony. Infiltration tasted of disorder. But Jace's certainty began to knit confidence where despair had ruled. Even Save, ever cautious, admitted the plan's logic. At last Zelera set her seal upon the mission. "Find my daughter," she said. "Bring her home." Preparations unfolded with precise urgency. Engineers repaired landing bays, while priests sang to soothe the planet's fractured resonance. Jace inspected gear, calibrating pulse rifles and resonance beacons side by side. He watched Illyrian scouts align their wing filaments for stealth flight, noting their discipline. Though his posture remained soldier-cold, he spoke to each of them, learning names and habits, weaving a fragile thread of trust. Vesper arrived as a silver sphere humming with soft lights, voice smooth as calm water. Parameters accepted. It announced, scanning the ruins. Probability of hostile contact exceeds 70%. Recommend preemptive countermeasures. Jay smirked. "Just stay close and don't lecture unless we're about to die." When dusk cloaked the moon in lavender haze, Zelera descended to the launch deck. Her gown of morning crystals shimmered like captured starlight. She walked among the crew until she stood before Jace. For a long moment they measured each other, the weight of a queen's hope against a soldier's promise. She touched the insignia on his chest, a gesture of solemn charge. "Return with her," she said quietly, "or return with truth." Jace inclined his head. "I'll bring her." The stealth corvette lifted, slipping beyond the stratosphere toward the Black Gulf. Inside, the team settled into stations. Scouts adjusted crystalline bows tuned to their wing beats. The engineer checked shape charges designed to mimic Hive biosignatures. Jay strapped in, eyes scanning the star-specked void. They crossed the outer sentry line 2 days later. Asteroid belts sprawled ahead, jagged silhouettes against the nebula's rose light. Hive spore ships drifted like bloated seeds, trailing threads of organic plasma. The corvette's dampeners hummed, masking their heat. Jace guided the pilot through narrow gaps, every sense taut. Vesper projected probability trees, while the scouts whispered resonance readings, searching for Lysera's unique imprint. Hours passed before faint energy ripples danced across sensors, erratic but unmistakable. "It's her," one scout breathed. "The pattern is royal." Hope sharpened into focus. They altered course toward the source, weaving through mineral debris. Tendrils of mist curled along the hull, leaving acidic etchings. The Hive's living environment reached for intruders like a predator tasting air. The signal repeated in uneven pulses, a fragile thread of sound wrapped in static. Jace leaned over the console, jaw tight, as Vesper filtered the interference. A child's voice emerged clearer with every pass, speaking in halting phrases that shifted between Illyrian tone glyphs and clipped human standard. She spoke of darkness, of walls that breathed, of leading others to hide when the hungry ones slept. Jace felt the team's attention settle on him, waiting for direction. He gave a single nod. "We follow." The corvette descended through the asteroid gap, engines whispering. Beyond lay the veiled nebula, clouds of rose and indigo gas boiling against the black. Between the veils moved vast shapes, spore ships the size of cities, each bristling with translucent limbs. They released threads of bioluminescence, luring drifting ice to harvest. The ship's dampeners dimmed every emission to a faint shimmer, barely distinguishable from dust. Jay studied a schematic projected above the deck. The Hive nursery was said to cling to an asteroid core deep inside the cluster, shielded by a lattice of organic membranes. Few who entered returned. He checked the magazine on his rifle and made sure the coil grenades at his belt were armed but dormant. The scouts whispered a quiet harmonic to cloak their scent. The resonance shimmered like a second skin. Even Vesper reduced its vocal timbre to a hush. A tremor slid through the hull as something enormous brushed past, scraping the outer plating. Through a narrow viewport, Jace glimpsed a drone carrier gliding by, its shell mottled with sensory nodules. He kept his breath steady until it vanished into mist. The pilot, An Illyrian named Shy guided them downward into a canyon between stone fragments. Fungal growths glowed pale green across the rock, oozing vapor that crystallized on the glass. The deeper they went, the stranger the air felt, as though pressure itself were alive. Readings spiked, then flattened when Vesper recalibrated the field. Jace checked the distress signal. It grew stronger, a heartbeat inside static. "She's close," murmured Talith, the younger scout. Her wing filaments quivered, translating faint harmonics embedded in the transmission. She tries to mask it, but the rhythm is royal. Jace rested a hand on her shoulder, grounding her excitement. "Keep focus. Hive territory means traps." He signaled Shy to reduce thrust. The ship crept forward, following the signal into a jagged mouth opening on the asteroid surface. Inside waited a tunnel wide enough for a cruiser. Its walls pulsed with sluggish light, veins running beneath a membrane of hardened resin. Moisture hung in strings from the ceiling, dripping onto a floor that flexed faintly under the Corvette's weight. Shy engaged landing struts. They would continue on foot from here. Larger craft risked detection deeper inside. The squad assembled at the airlock, checking weapons and harnesses. Jay scanned their faces. Shy calm but alert, Talith bright-eyed with an edge of nerves, Vesper hovering close, silent as a watchful star. "Stay tight," Jace ordered. "Minimal light, no stray resonance unless I call it." The lock hissed open, releasing them into the hive. Heat and sour sweetness rolled over them, carrying faint whispers. No words, only impressions of hunger and command. Talith stiffened, feathers slick against her back. "They talk through scent and pulse," she said softly. "If they sense our minds, they'll swarm." Vesper emitted a narrow counterfrequency, knitting a shell around their thoughts. They advanced along the corridor, boots sinking slightly in fibrous matter. The walls were not stone, but layered chitin laced with strands that trembled as if aware of their passage. Ahead, the tunnel forked. One branch sloped upward, the other spiraled down into darkness. Jace crouched, examining traces on the floor. Small impressions, light yet deliberate, too organized for drones. "Prisoners," he said, moving downward. Minutes stretched into an hour as they wound deeper, always descending. Sometimes the path widened into chambers where sacks of gel hung from the ceiling, each holding shifting silhouettes. The team skirted them carefully. Once, a sack quivered and tore, spilling a half-formed drone that twitched before curling in on itself. Jace felt every muscle tense. The place was a factory for war, and they were trespassing inside its heart. The signal wavered, then steadied. Lysra's voice grew clearer. Safer now, others scared, teaching them quiet. Pride flickered across Zelra's memory in Jace's mind, though she was not there, just the image he carried of a queen's hope. The girl had spirit. She was keeping fellow captives alive. He filed that away as fuel for later, when the road became harder. Talith halted abruptly, staring at a low wall ahead. Embedded in the resin was a shard of clear crystal carved with a human letter H. Jace bent to inspect it, recognizing the groove of a combat knife. Someone, maybe Lysra, maybe another prisoner, had etched a sign. Below it a faint scratch read hope. He traced the cut with a gloved finger, committing its position to memory, proof they weren't too late. A faint vibration rippled through the floor. Vesper's light shifted amber. "Motion behind us," it murmured. Multiple sources. Jace gestured for silence and led the group into a narrow passage on the left. They pressed against the wall, slowing breathing until the sounds passed. The scrape of claws, the rustle of wings against resin. Drones. Patrols were thickening. The hive knew someone trespassed. They continued, more cautious now, pausing at each junction to listen. At last the passage opened into a cavern where a waterfall of luminous fluid poured from high above, feeding a pool that shimmered with captured starlight. Across the water rose another tunnel, rimmed with thorn-like growths. The signal emanated from beyond. Jay scanned the pool. Currents hid something beneath. He slung a line to a protrusion and crossed first, moving with deliberate speed. The scouts followed, wings folded tight. Shy brought up the rear, careful not to splash. Midway, a tremor rolled through the stone. Vesper darted higher, sensors flaring. Incoming mass vector above. Shadows fell as an opening yawned overhead. Organic pods descended on tendrils, releasing chittering drones. They landed in arcs around the squad, mandibles clicking. Jace's rifle snapped up before thought. He fired 3 bursts, each cutting through a drone's thorax. Shy hurled a compact charge that blossomed in blue plasma, staggering the attackers. Talith loosed a resonance arrow. The crystal tip vibrated at lethal frequency, splitting a carapace in 2. Yet more poured from the ceiling. Back to the wall. Jace shouted, guiding them against a ridge where they could limit exposure. He lobbed a magnet mine at the pool. When drones tried to cross, it detonated, throwing shards and boiling water into the air. Steam cloaked them, buying seconds. Vesper projected false signatures, leading part of the swarm toward empty corners. Still, numbers pressed. Jace saw a stinger spear toward Talith. He shoved her aside, taking the glancing strike across his armor. Pain flared but dulled by adrenaline. He switched a blade, slicing through the limb, then drove the weapon upward, spilling dark ichor. The last drone hesitated, sensing the pattern of its fallen kin. It shrieked and fled upward, retreating to the hatch it came from. Silence fell except for their own breathing. Jace wiped resin from his visor. Jace forced his hands to unclench, letting the tension bleed into controlled purpose. Lysra was alive but already being taken toward the Hive's core. Every second gave the enemy a stronger grip. He crouched with the others just beyond the living membrane, eyes adjusting to the faint pulse of light inside the resin walls. "We move now," he said quietly. "Straight charge would get her killed. We cut them out first, then break her free." Shy glanced down the corridor behind them. "Patrols will come hunting the noise from the pool. We can't hold this choke for long." "That's why we don't," Jace replied. He traced a quick schematic into the dust. 3 routes, 1 curving behind the chamber, 1 threading an overhead vent, and a 3rd burrowing toward the fortress heart. "Talith, you take the vent and set 2 charges above the pen. Keep them low yield, just enough to make chaos if they try to rush the kids. Shy, you loop behind with Vesper and plant beacons along their fallback path. I'll go straight for the guards, holding Lysra. When we trigger, we pull her through the breach and head for the shaft leading out of the nursery." Vesper floated closer, projecting a soft amber glow. "Probability of success rises if we neutralize the pheromone relay node first. It controls nearby drones." "Mark it," Jay said. A faint icon flared in his visor, an organ clinging to the far wall. "Good. We hit it on the way." The scouts moved without hesitation, wings folding tight to fit narrow crawlways. Jace pressed his palm to the resin seam and sliced carefully until a slit opened wide enough for him to slip through. The air inside was heavy with musk and low vibrations, like a heartbeat felt through bone. Across the chamber, Lysra struggled in the grip of 2 massive guards. Even through grime, her eyes gleamed sharp, defiance unbroken. The sight steeled him. He crept along a ridge, rifle angled down, to keep its sensor profile low. The pheromone node pulsed rhythmically, threads running from it to surrounding pods. Jace judged distance, adjusted his aim, and sent a silent signal to Vesper. A pulse of white noise spread, dampening Hive scent currents for a heartbeat. He squeezed the trigger. A burst of Ionis particles ripped through the node. Green vapor hissed out, and nearby drones faltered, antennae twitching. Lysra twisted at the distraction, slamming her crystal shard into the forelimb of the drone nearest her. Its screech echoed off the walls. Talith's first charge popped high above, showering dust and shards, small but bright enough to make guards recoil. Jace broke cover, sprinting across the chamber. He cut down 1 guard with 3 precise shots, then slammed into the second, driving his shoulder into its thorax. The impact jarred every bone, but threw the creature off balance. Lysra wrenched free and scrambled toward the children, shepherding them behind stalagmites. Shy's voice murmured through comms, calm despite urgency. Beacons set. Outer route clear for 60 seconds. "Time we don't waste," Jace answered. He scanned the chamber. Smaller drones were regaining orientation. Their limbs flexed for assault. He tossed a smoke canister laced with micromagnets. As it burst, iron-rich mist clung to chitin and confused their sensory pits. "Move!" Lysra gathered the captives, murmuring firm instructions. They obeyed instantly, eyes wide but steady. Jace noted how she kept herself between danger and the smallest, leadership etched in every motion. For a moment he saw Zelira's composure mirrored there. Talith dropped from the vent, landing lightly beside them. She offered Lysra a quick bow. "Your Highness," were extraction detail. Lysra gave a sharp nod. "Then let's finish this before the brood regroups." Together, they guided the children toward the breach where Shy waited. Behind them the hive stirred with angry resonance, a pressure building in the air as if the fortress itself drew breath. Jace knew that meant a summons to heavier defenders. He turned to Vesper. "Route." "Left fork, 20 meters," the drone replied, its tone clipped. "Then vertical shaft to central cortex. Probability high that matriarch lies ahead." "Noted." Jace looked back to Lysra. "You keep your people close. We end this, or none of us get clear." They slipped into the left corridor, resin floor slick under hurried steps. Faint light spilled from veins overhead, casting their shadows long and warped. The captives moved in disciplined silence under Lysra's guidance, a testament to lessons she had taught in secret. Jace fell in beside her, speaking low. "You kept them alive inside this nest." "They needed something stronger than fear," she replied, voice hoarse but steady. "I told them stories about stars humans cross with nothing but will. I told them if you could walk into darkness for them, they could learn courage." He allowed himself a tight smile, despite urgency. "Good stories." The tunnel narrowed, forcing them into single file. A tremor ran along the walls. The hive was shifting resources toward containment. From deeper ahead came a resonant screech layered with meaning none of Illyrians translated aloud. Whatever called them was ancient and furious. They reached a vertical shaft, an open cylinder descending toward a luminescent pit. A platform of hardened secretion jutted halfway down, shaped like an altar. Around it clustered cocoons, each housing equipment or living biomass. Vesper pulse violet. Central command interface below. If destroyed, drone coordination will falter. J scanned options. Climbing down with the children exposed them too long. "Shy, take them along that side ledge," he instructed. "Talith, cover." He grabbed a line from his harness and hooked it to the lip. "I'll clear bottom." Lysra stepped forward. "I fight too." He met her gaze, weighing risk against the resolve there. "Stay behind me, then watch the young." They descended carefully, Jace first, rifle ready. At the base, a circular membrane quivered like a heartbeat behind translucent skin. Shapes shifted beyond. The matriarch's inner sanctum, if Vesper's readings were right. He planted a beacon for emergency recall, then signaled for the squad to regroup on a low shelf. The membrane split with a slow, wet sound, revealing a chamber awash in eerie glow. At its center rose a structure grown from bone and resin, throne and nerve cluster entwined. Resting upon it was a creature vast and terrible, crown of spines catching light. The matriarch herself. Her eyes, black pools rimmed with silver, fixed on the intruders. Around her seethed a tide of elite drones, armor gleaming. Jace felt adrenaline steady his breath. He checked their formation quickly, Shy guarding captives at rear, Talith poised at her bow, Vesper drifting forward, sensors alive. Lysra stood tall beside him, crystal shard reversed in her grip. Her feathers, though dulled, caught the chamber's glow like a banner. The girl who had survived capture was now ready to defy the queen of predators. "Options," Jace murmured. "Minimal," Vesper said, "but if you overload the neural lattice beneath the throne, feedback may cripple control." Jace nodded once. There would be no second attempt. They would strike or die here. He raised his rifle, heart set like iron. "Then we hit hard, free, and get out.